Hey, it's me, 28mm RPG. How are you guys doing out there? There's like a big crowd. A big crowd! Hey, Shadow. Nice to see you too. And no, I'm not avoiding anybody or anything. I get slammed on Discord. So keep in mind if I'm missing, Q&A and stuff like that. It's a matter of I'm trying to trim down my friends list a little bit, so it's not so crazy. But for those that are friends that I haven't talked to in a while, well, there's reasons. I've been pretty busy, so and it's cool to see that Shadow Sun is still using my intro music. Awesome. And of course, we got Spencer in the background. Hey, Spencer. Both me and Spencer have been yakking in the backdrop there on Discord as well. So, a lot of cool things I want to kind of cover here. Yeah, what's up, Spence? Spence has been working. He's been a working man. So he's been too busy to play with me on Wednesday nights. but that should change, I'm hoping. Yeah, I almost forgot about the stream too. I got so involved with what was going on. Your discussion there in the RPG talk in Discord has been going on crazy. So it's been some interesting stuff being discussed there as well. For those that are not in the know, we do have a Discord for 4D roleplay. It's the Crusade, it's the RPG Crusade. So feel free to join it. Ask me how to join, whatever, send me a message, send me an email. All my particulars are on my intro video. Not the intro video to this video, but intro video, which is on the homepage of my YouTube channel. So all that questions and stuff is on there. Yeah, it's that's the way springtime goes. It's busy because a lot of us old people like me are working in gardens and stuff and trying to get everything ready to go, especially with the slow growing season up here in Grand Prairie, Alberta. So that's where I'm from, Alberta, the place that might separate from Canada. I'm not too sure, but we'll find out in the near future. Oh, it's cool to see RPG Grandma as well in the crowd. Hey. Awesome to see everybody here. There's been some really cool videos that have been going on related to 4D, and one of them came up last night for me, which was actually Flame Zombies video. So I'd like to go over that. And Flame Zombies video is about D&D. Stop moving your players for them. And, this is this, to some people, this may not be an objection. I mean, it depends on how you've been playing over the years, but a lot of players would like some autonomy in what they do. And, I particularly don't like a GM that will move my character for me. I mean, I don't move his NPCs for the game master, so why would I do that? Oh, okay, we got a new person here. And LSG Dean recently discovered you guys through Black Lodge. Yeah, Crispy and Phil, everybody, I figure you check this out. Well, I'm not sure I'm going to be entertainment worthy as some of those guys, but I don't know. I got my own quirks and interesting things. So yay, yeah, just me. So yeah, It's so 4D. For you, LSG Dean, 4D is basically, everybody stays in character in the game, and time management is a thing. Okay, to get the most game out of the length of time that you've set aside for the players. Now, this is to get rid of all the little crosstalk and all the metagaming and stuff. Okay, so metagaming is when you're interjecting, while another player is having their turn. You're saying, don't do that spell, do this spell because we've got this plan coming up. In real life, you don't have those options, so don't play them like that. You get a distorted idea of reality if you play in metagaming. Okay, that's my personal take on it. So some people may want to have metagaming going on, but in 4D, don't do that because everybody wants to take their turn and have it done, have their action and what they do, what they say, where they are is all explicitly told every round. Okay, where you stand may not be explicitly said because you may not decide to move, so you will be assumed that you were in the same position as before. So your game master should not be moving you unless you say you're moving to the pillar, moving towards your combatant, whatever it is. So that is the crux of 4D gameplays, is not to impede anybody else's turn. That is the form of manners that we are utilizing in 4D. When you get that down with your players, your game will go way faster. You will have more turns occurring every half hour than you would have, say, in a immersive game where he takes an hour to get through all 8 characters in one round. How many people out there have had games where you're just sitting there waiting endlessly for your turn to come up? Well, you have less of that happening in a 4D game because everybody's listening to each other, because all the players are giving cues as well to the co-creation of what's happening. And there can be instances where players themselves can bring on stuff upon the situation at hand by co-creation as well. So it's interesting. So let's see. Max, player 5? Okay, I think if your name is Max, you're a great player. It opens up the table too much, or alpha gaming, one guy directing, or the weak. Yeah. I mean, you don't. I mean, you want to have you have an idea in your head as a player of what you want to do, and that is subject to change from round to round because what the other characters are doing in order, and we're going in a rotational order with the group continuously. You have this plan, so you must execute it one step at a time. In order to get to the door, you must walk to the door. It is determined whether or not you reach the door within that turn or not. It would be specified by the game master if you successfully reach the door. Stuff like that. So you have to remember the game master does have a leeway within your context of your turn as well. So they could say that you did not reach it yet, or something else happens upon your, you trying to reach that location. It would be in best interest of the game master to imply how many turns it would get. It would be like, you could imply that it will take 2 turns to reach the, say, a chest or whatever at the end of the room. It would take 2 turns, or 1 turn at a run. So you're basically gutting it to the location. Keep and stuff like this would be discussed during the session 0, of course. Definitely hold these discussions session 0, but accept whatever it is the game master has ruled at the moment during the gameplay. You'll be able to, talk about that at the end of the session, whether or not you had a disagreement with the game master or not on how the reality was provided for the players to interact with. But that helps you at the end of the game to kind of clarify things maybe later on in your explanations. So depending on your players, who you're playing with, how much they go into the co-creation themselves, it may not be an issue, or it might be an issue. You discover that stuff at the end of the game, at the end of the session. So it's always good to have those discussions at the end of a session, or even session 0, or before the session even starts. So yeah, pre-planning my turn and then forget it because things took long. Yeah, well, that's a thing that sometimes happens as well. I mean, if you're a Matt Mercer's game, and you have that, and this has been exemplified by Crispy's video where he did an overview of one turn in combat, which took 1 hour for the 8 people to get through. In a 4D game, that might take, if you got 8 players, maybe 10 minutes, give or take. But you're going to get exceptionally better results by applying manners in the game and having a round robin of what is happening with all your players as they go on. And make sure your players are listening to each other, too. It's one thing to be sitting there and you could be daydreaming, but in 4D, please be sharp, because everybody's introducing a new thing into the scene as well, especially with co-creation. If you don't have co-creation, it's not so bad. Okay, you're just basically playing a 3D game where all the manners are implied and no co-creation is going on, but it is still acceptable to keep that time factor per player as minimal as possible. I personally do this because I'm getting too old. I can't do the 8-hour games and of sitting there and maybe getting 4 turns. I can't do that. I can't invest my time that way. I'm too old for that. I only have so many hours left in my life. I'm 60. And I'm looking at 80 maybe being my max for GMing or being a player before my faculties start dwindling away. So to me, it's important. And those who are older will find this important as well. The younger you are to discover this, the better, the better your results will be, because you'll grow up in the aspects of 4D, staying in character, and maximizing your time efficiency in the game. I tried to explain to folks, regardless of whether we are doing mind or visual aids or terrain, and I think radio show describes that. Yeah. Radio show does. I mean, there's nothing wrong with showing pictures or stuff like that in order to alleviate the game master of, an hour of explaining what they see to you in front of you in the view. You could have a picture showing all of that, and it makes it much more easy. Visualizing with a picture, you get instantaneous results from the players. So the players will know exactly what they're looking at. They don't have to rely on your verbalization of what they see in front of them, which may take, if it's something like out of Tomb of Horror, for example, some of those pictures are pretty detailed, and there are a lot of clues in some of those pictures. in Tomb of Horror. And those visual aids are awesome for, with AI nowadays. You should be able to bring up a picture of some form, or have somebody who has access to AI like Midjourney or something like that. They may they may have an account that doesn't have such limitations as some of the low level accounts, where they could go ahead and make whatever pictures for you very easily. So, but yeah, I don't mind having like a map. Like if I have a display, of a map or something, that's a cool visual aid that could be used. You're not using it for combat or anything. It's like a visual overview of the campaign area or something like that. That's what I would use. It would have like, where certain towns are, whatever was discussed during the session 0, whatever the play area is. And just we have a lot of talking in the background. Awesome, guys. I appreciate you guys having discussions and everything on both the Discord as well as on my chat. And people, read the chat too. I mean, there's some good insight and a bit of crosstalk going on too. It's awesome. Nice. Okay. As a GM, I have always spent my time on NPCs and setting. I really concern myself with stories. So exactly. When I do stuff, I'm gonna have like a list of NPCs that I write down in a book as I'm doing session 0. These aren't pre-made or anything. I'll just write stuff down. And I might give a few kind of aspects that I can bring up, or maybe an idea of a character from a movie, and imply that. I might write that down. Being Geralt from The Witcher. We're gonna have that as a character kind of aspect. He's gonna be talking like this all the time, and very stoic and that sort of stuff. So you have these visual cues on paper for you to kind of remember the things. As memory is flawed, and the older you get, the worse it gets. So I'm battling that myself. So taking all kinds of interesting supplements and stuff like that in order to see whether or not it will help me or not. I discovered lion's mane really does help. So if anybody's out there, in my age group, lion's mane mushrooms, awesome stuff. You can get them in capsule form, or you can cook them. Get them from the grocery store and cook them and eat them raw or whatever. Lion's mane mushrooms. I have had really good results with lion's mane. So. Not to be like some sort of doctor or anything, but it's just food that you eat. So, let's go through some of these here. Over preparers. Yeah. Okay. So all I need is my NPCs, their goals. Okay, and then we'll have a few areas, kind of indicative of the area that we're talking about in session 0. For example, our session 0 for our game with Worlds Without was it Worlds Without Number or something? We basically plotted out the land. It was going to be desert and a few other kind of small biomes that would occur in this area, plus some surprises, which Crispy put in as well. You can always put in extra stuff as a game master too, if you wanted to. That wasn't discussed in session 0. That's always it's your game as the game master. You might decide that there is some form of a different, like an oasis in a particular area or something, or maybe it's more like a Sahara, like a I don't know, savanna kind of area instead of being desert. You could put that stuff in there, but have ideas of what you could imagine in those particular areas in the savannah, the tall trees, you know, what they visualize what they would look like, imply them in your game. They may be used at for the players. You know, the players may decide to climb trees or something like that in order to get a better view at certain things. But you know, kind of get some ideas of what you would find in those regions, and you know, have like a collection in your book. Just write a list of different things you would find in a desert, and just write those down. You could even have the AI answer this for you. I use Aria off of or Aria off of Opera, the Opera browser. Aria is free. It's a little side tab that you can go ahead and bring out, and it'll answer questions for you. So if you say, give me 10 different interesting locations you would find in a savanna biome area, and it will list some pretty interesting things, and you could imply that it's for a Dungeons and Dragons game. Or you can imply it's for a sci-fi role-playing game. So it has an idea, the AI has an idea of what you're kind of asking. You can also give it some guidance. You can say, this is an example of a list of what I want. So you give like 3 examples. Give me a list of 10, exactly the same outline as my example. And the AI will do it for you. So you have to be very specific on what you ask your AI. So that does help as well. I prepare sometimes that way. I'll get some ideas as well. And I don't really write down much, but you know, it's just ideas. I don't know where it's going to go as the game, you know, unravels. The players decide on where they're going to, what they're going to do. So I just basically go with the flow, and from there on adjudicate what the chances are for certain things and stuff like that. So that's basically it. I try to stay out of the way as much as possible, but I do include my NPCs' actions so the players know what my NPCs are doing as well. You should do that. You should imply what in the vicinity of the character, what is going on as well. So I think it's important. So you don't always think that the NPC or whatever, if there's an NPC in the party, you know that it is not just standing there being, it is a moving entity itself and doing stuff. Yeah. The audio theater nerd. Well, the thing is, you're not trying to do this to be a thing of theater. You're trying to do this. You're playing a character, and if your character is hurt, you play him as hurt, and you emphasize as hurt. And what your actions do will imply you're hurt as well. So, the better player you are at playing out the contingencies against you, the better. Don't be scared. Don't be scared to do that. It's also part of an answer to a question that was asked on the Discord as well on how to do 4D crits. And should I get into that? Maybe I'll get into that. This one was from Hexman Actual, and he was asking how to do 4D crits and stuff like that. So here's my insight on it. Okay, so let's say, for example, it's a sci-fi game or something like that, or it has guns, pistols, shotguns, that kind of stuff. So the way I see it is I look at the weapon, I say, what is the worst thing that this weapon can do? If say for example, it's a shotgun. Okay, so your enemy has a shotgun, and he's pointing at you, and he pulls a trigger, and what is the maximum damage a shotgun can do in reality? Well, it could kill you. Well, if you are aiming at a particular part of the body, say you're implying that you are aiming for the hand, his shooting hand, the shooting hand of the character, then boom, if you roll to succeed and you succeed, boom, yeah, you've hit the hand and you do the damage. Roll the damage. If it's max damage, imagine what max damage as a shotgun would do. It may blow a hand off. It may blow the arm off. It may blow some of the fingers off. It may just render the arm useless. It depends on how you see it as the player. Okay. Now you have to have players that are good enough to, to say, yeah, my character is wounded. That is a nasty, and I will play that out. Oh, my fingers, right? You don't have to actively say, oh, my fingers or whatever. You just imply that your character is wounded and you're going to continue. Now, first thing you would do as a character that has had his fingers removed, maybe he has two fingers and a thumb left, whatever the decision is. Then you play that character out. First, you're going to want to go ahead and start staunching that blood, like get out of the area and start staunching the blood and stuff like that. Or you're going to start bleeding out. So keep the reality in your game as well. If this is how you're playing it out, this is all session 0 stuff too as well. So you may tell the players that, hey, yeah, if you get hit with a shotgun, you expect to be missing limbs or something, like we're going to play it out realistically as far as the damage goes. Okay. So I just look at how bad that damage roll was. If it's really high, well then, yeah, it's going to be maximum damage of what a shotgun can do. Pistol. If, say, example was a pistol, what's the maximum a pistol could do as maximum damage? Well, it could hit an artery or something like that, or it could render the limb useless if he's aiming for the arm, say, for example. If he's aiming for the head, yeah, it could cause an eye wound or something like that, or something real nasty. I let that up to the player character to perform that out. That is up to the player character. I give them the damage as far as the game master is concerned. From the NPC point of view, it is up to the player to decide how that has affected him. And the better player you will have, the better description you're going to get out of that character and the way he plays it. And it works really well. You have to have good vetted players. Ones that are not scared to lose, right? You want players that will play out a character, not play out a character receiving XPs in order to go up levels to win. You're more than that as far as a character is concerned. Sure, XP might be important if you're playing like a campaign setting, so he's gaining experience through it. But worry about that at the end of the session and stuff like that. Don't start asking questions about that kind of stuff during the middle of the session. But that's the thing. Aim shot is a thing that might be implied in Traveler. It depends on the rule set you're using as well. So kind of correlate with what's going on with your rule set. And homebrew a lot of it, because there are no defined rules as far as playing out a character in 4D. A lot of stuff that you do in 4D is more realistic kind of things that aren't implied in the rules. Like they won't have maybe a rule for taking hinges off of a door. There might not be anything written about that, so you have to imply that through homebrewy kind of ideas in the game. As long as you keep that rule consistent throughout all the sessions continuously, in order to pry the bolts off of the hinges of the door. It's going to take some time, and you might want to apply a roll to see how quickly that gets resolved or not. It's all up to you. It's a game master, but remain consistent throughout your session. At the end of the session, if there's any contingencies against your ruling, well, discuss them then and talk about it. That's what the end of the session is for. Is to BS and have your fun. As far as we talk about fun as being, crosstalk and beer and pretzels kind of stuff. Yeah, do that at the end of we always do that at the end of our games. We have our beer and pretzel time at the end or before the session starts. Let's see. This does help you a lot. I think reading or listening to audibles of old cult classic like Conan novels and stuff like that, Robert E. Howard kind of stuff. Those great pulpy novels. You can see that their descriptions are very kind of basic. Okay, that's all you need. You just need to give the roundabout of what the vicinity contains for the players. And then the players can go on to decide what they're going to do. They may just be able to see like 10 feet in front of them. They might have a torchlight. They can't see the entirety of this 40-foot room. They only see maybe half of it. And they're like, see it continuing down. It's like a large cavernous corridor or something, and the player describes his character moving in further. He doesn't say, "Oh, I want to go to the end of." I move further another 20 feet, and that's what you're doing. Torch. He's implying that his torch is in hand. Visual cues. Really. This is why we have to have cameras in our online games so that you can see what's happening, visually with the players, talking to each other or talking to just like talking out their action. So when they say that, "Oh, I'm moving forwards with the torchlight in hand," that helps. But not to go off topic, but with phones, nobody describes what they've seen. They just hand you the phone. It hurts to see it. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Let's see what else is here. What are the most immersive moments in 4D? For me, it's talking down to a night street and have a former enemy, relate about life, having a heavy discussion with loved one, etc. I mean, yeah, you can have these interesting moments. I would say equate it to what you see in a lot of movies or series on TV. You could take an example of say, Knives Out. A lot of people have seen the Knives Out series of movies, and you're getting little bits of information on what each character is about in different. You don't have to go through a whole exposition of what your character is all about all in one go. So you introduce these things gradually, like salt and pepper on a good meal, that kind of thing. You don't want to have a whole ton of it all at once, all in one, salty, or whatever. But you want to be able to sprinkle it in and get people to understand what your character's about. You don't have to explain why you do the things you do when you do them, but through working with the other characters, talking in amongst each other as characters, you discover more. You can ask questions about the character. Of course, when you meet somebody new, you ask, hey man, what's your name? That sort of thing. We have Tyler in the background. I actually have a flame zombie video lined up here, which I thought was very cool. So I'll just hold up here. We'll just go through some of the questions here before we get you on. And it's good to see other people like Kingmaker. And we have a whole bunch of people here. Crazy. It's awesome. So I do intend on having these Thursday, just for everybody that's in the 4D community to come in and ask their random questions and stuff like that, or questions that they think would be interesting enough for the people that just come in and say, what is this that we're doing? Ask those kinds of questions too, because we want to bring in more people into 4D so that they understand what we were trying to do. So let's stop doing a bunch of questions here. Let's get you in here, Tyler, and add you to the stage. Hey, man.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
How's it going, Rick?
Good. Long time no speak.
I know. That's why I was hoping to be able to do this. I just got done making a late brunch, and then I was like, oh man, I'll pop in. It was interesting conversation. I was like, well, if there's a conversation I can't think of anything to say on, then people started talking. Yeah, people started talking about stuff, and I was like, I just made a video that sounds quite a bit like what people are talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I saw this one last night. It was like, oh yeah, you're bringing up some pretty interesting stuff. And so those who do not know who Tyler is, he is Flame Zombie here. You can see that on the video here, it's got his little tag at the bottom there, and you can go ahead and subscribe to him. He's got some great information on a lot of the stuff that like Lindy Beige brings up too, like combat scenarios and stuff. I think that's really cool.
Thanks, man.
What have you been doing lately?
Oh man. Well, I'm getting married on Saturday, so that's pretty much absorbed all of my time.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So if you haven't, I've been trying to film more and more videos in between the time that I've been free. But yeah, I've been absolutely swamped getting that filled. Plan to do more of those combat style videos because I'm going to start teaching more.
Okay.
Cool. I had a dojo in town ask me, see me do stuff, see me do some public seminars, and we're like, dude, we want you to come teach here weekly. Thank you, Max.
Awesome.
Thank you, Daryl. Yeah, that's true.
We got a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
that's been a long time.
We just celebrated our 25th anniversary, so me and Karen. So it's been some time. It's always,
That's
even
awesome,
to the day we do have our miscommunications every once in a while. But I think that's because we're getting older and we're like, what did you mean by that? But my wife gets she works for a huge paint company that and she does so much pipeline stuff.
Oh wow.
And the pipeline stuff requires very specific kinds of paints that are brought up from the States. So there's like all these the tariffs, all this talk about all that stuff.
Yeah.
Her transport costs are like going right up, It's just it's nuts here, and so she has to vent. She has to vent on whenever she comes home, and I got to be there for the vent.
Yeah.
it's part of our relationship to make sure that you can talk to each other and stuff. And
Yeah,
I just don't
absolutely.
say anything to her. I'm just like, oh, and every once in a while I'll say, oh, what about if you do this? Like maybe this will help.
Yeah.
But you're usually not actually helping. You're just gonna. She just wants to vent, right? So,
Yeah.
keep
No,
that in mind. It's women need to have their vent time, and you just
oh
shut up
man,
and it'll
I
help.
get it. She's a nurse, and she tells me about some of her patients, and I'm just going,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, no. It's like, no, you're being reasonable here, honey. That's insane. Talking about guys walking around with like gangrenous feet, and then just telling people, "Oh, no, it's it's fine." And they're like, "Dude, we're gonna," and then they're getting pissed because they're like, "Well, we're gonna have to send you into surgery because we're gonna have to cut your foot off." Like, it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Sometimes
Yeah.
save people from themselves, but
Yep.
yeah. Um, LSG Dean, who I think is new here, asked. He's new in the Discord, right?
Yes.
All right, awesome. He asked what I practice. It's almost easier to tell you what I don't practice. Not quite, but I practice historical European martial arts, primarily German longsword. But I also teach dagger, dusik, which is a single-handed sword, catch wrestling, karate. I teach a couple of self-defense and MMA classes privately. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what I actively currently practice. What I've practiced in the past, I've taken a few Brazilian jiu-jitsu classes, a capoeira class, boxing classes. So yeah, I've run the gamut. if,
Cool.
if it's
Cool.
interesting and I have the time to do it, I'll usually do it.
As far as gaming goes, do you have your own group of gamers that you've been playing around locally?
I do. We've been on a hiatus while I'm doing the wedding planning stuff. Um, it was just a few things after the other, and then I was looking at our scheduling and was like, okay, actually, because this Saturday I have the wedding. Last Saturday I had to go get my suit and get it tailored. The Saturday before that, they two of my players were gone helping their family wrangle cattle, and then so it was just like, you know what? Let's just put everything on pause, and then we'll come back to it when we come back to it. That way, we're not doing.
Yeah, springtime tends to be a little bit busy. I'm doing like
Yeah.
I've got a big patch that I've dug out in the back, and I filled it in for a patio area. So I
Yep.
brought crushed stone, and then I've got sand and everything. Got the thing totally flat now, and I've had a couple of rain storms that have come by and helped with keeping making it level and everything. I've been having a heck of a time out there, and now I've got the stones coming in, and that's going to be like fun. I've been a tile setter for quite a few, like about 30 years, so it's
Oh wow.
it's part of what I do. But I've been trying to
That's
beautify
cool.
the house now that the kids are out and
Mhm.
everything,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, so I've been working on the background here,
I
trying to
know
move
that's
in all my
freaking sweet.
equipment from my for those that didn't know, Dave St. James was my bass player. He's quite well known in this area of Canada, so a lot of people know of him, know his kids because they are also musicians too. And yeah, he passed away quite a few weeks ago, and we had to move all our equipment out of our practice area. So I'm kind of inundated with trying to get my equipment mixed in with my other hobby gears here as well, which includes painting miniatures as
Mhm.
well as a lot of game stuff in the background.
Yep.
Less time for you guys.
Yep.
I'm sorry that I've had to go ahead and be out of the 4D role play for a bit, but I mean it's quite a shock when you've reached my age and you've got people dying left, right, and center. Like just passing away. You start to kind of reflect on, geez, I have things that I want to do. I want to do some recording and get some music out and that sort of stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, Dave St. James was right into the same. He was like, yeah, we got to do this before we get way too old and blah blah blah, and yeah, unfortunately, that came a little too soon for him, and it's how life goes. So, and yeah, so and same with D&D and stuff. I mean, you're gonna have friends that are gonna be leaving the hobby indiscriminately.
Yeah.
Due
Well,
to things happening.
I was just telling someone, I even before I found the whole 4D, 3D, well, before I found it, before it existed, years and years ago, like when 5e started coming out, there were just years that I just didn't end up playing RPGs at all because I was like, I played 5e enough times and I didn't have the words or the framework to put like, why am I not enjoying this anymore? Like, I'd had enough of the what we would now call the 2D 1D stuff, but I was just like, I don't know what it is about this that I'm not enjoying, and part of it was the system, part of it was everyone was playing 5e and people just refused to try new systems, and so it was like, well, I don't really like 5e, so I guess I just won't play this. And then there were other things where it was like, you have there was that big pushback on it's what my character would do, and I always was like, why is that a problem? Why is it a problem to just do what your character would do if it really is what your character would do? Like, oh, we've got Crispy, awesome, man,
Awesome, cool.
We need to do a stream again sometime.
Hey, we can always do one now. If Crispy has time, he can always pop in.
There you go.
And for those that may not be in the know, one of my first actual games where we were in character all the time was with Tyler, when we both joined in with Abe's game, and he was it was kind of like an anime isekai kind of theme behind it. So you become players in a virtual multiplayer online game. So you're playing a guy that takes on a persona in a multiplayer online MMO, basically, and that's how we were playing it out. And we were using co-creation quite a bit in Abe's game, with ideas on how we would use the environment to our advantage and stuff like that. So we were using the trees as part of our camouflage, sticking branches.
And it was interesting. I liked it was interesting to be able to like use the hide the mechanics of the game behind the UI of the MMO. I enjoyed that. I wish it's unfortunate the falling out we had, because that was interesting. But we've there's definitely been, and it goes to show that it's not, even in a super crunchy system like that, you can do it, because that was that system, Infinity's Edge, I think it was called.
Yes.
Super crunchy. One of the crunchiest systems I played. It's one where you mark down experience every time you succeed at an action, and so there was a lot of bookkeeping. But as long as you're quick with it, just while somebody else is, while the GM's describing what's happening, all you do is mark a little tally that continue on. As long as you're on top of it and you're prioritizing that role play, it's and it can be it was very fun to try and think of, like, you're thinking of the action and you're trying to go, how would I do that as a character in this world and not as me, Tyler?
And we were pretty green at that, at doing 4D basically.
Yeah, it was brand new at the time.
But Abe had an interesting philosophy that he would basically punish you in the game if you weren't abiding by the rules, which I mean, if you're using it as a learning tool, definitely I would say that the character, basically, if you don't imply that you're doing an action, well, you're not doing an action. And Abe would imply to you as the narrator that you are standing there, and so he's basically stating the status of your character, just so that you understand that you didn't actually say an action. So next turn you might be able to get to it. So using it as a punishment in order to become a learning tool, I would definitely do that if you're if you have a new group and you want to get them into 4D role playing.
Yep.
I would say it would work as a good tool method in order to enforce the rules.
And another way you can do it too, if is just assume things that aren't stated as actions are dialogue from the character.
Yes.
So I used the example quite a bit because I thought it was a really fun one, which was the player characters were made aware of a prophecy of a meteorite that was slowly crashing, and it was getting pretty close. It was just barely visible in the midday sun, and then later in the session, one of my players goes, "Is it visible?" And I just have a peasant walk by because they're in the middle of town and goes, "Is what visible?" And now they're like, now they have to save it. They're like, "Oh, nothing. There's no reason to panic." And I thought that was great. It got them right back into character. And then, and then he goes, "I look up to see if I can see anything, at like how close it is,
Yeah, if you have NPCs in the vicinity, it does make a good resolve in game for the game master. Otherwise, you'd have to, as a game master, if there's just him in the area and he starts asking questions to the air.
Right.
You just have to tell him, X stands talking to the air. And that's all Abe basically did.
Yep.
And to kind of make you go, "Oh, yes." And it's a good tool.
It's Conway says, "I wouldn't punish my players to teach 4D since that's a misalignment of goals. The players must want to roleplay." That's true. But punishment might not even be the way to mention it. It's kind of just a reminder of like, hey, this is, because it's so easy to just, even if you want to, even if you're like, yeah, that sounds cool, it's easy to fall back into the old habits. I mean, especially us guys that have been doing it the older ways for so many years, it's even easy.
We as players, we never took it as being mean or a punishment. We took it as a learning tool. It was like, oh yeah, I did mess that up.
It's kind of like if you want to get better in martial arts, it's not being mean for the coach to tap you when you're open. It's just like, hey, you're open. You need to tighten that up.
Yeah. You're just giving cues and imply that if you're going to have a game where you do apply a measure of what you would call a punishment, I guess. Just imply that in the game in the session 0 that okay, this is being used as a teaching guide. If you do some sort of thing that isn't 4D, you'll be reminded of it in order to establish clear goals, that the clear guidelines that the players have to stay in. So, and that's basically it. I did a couple mistakes in the game as well as everybody else, and you just take it as, oh yeah, I messed up. Okay. I'll clear this up. I'm ready for my next turn,
That Traveler game I played with you, which nobody called out, and I didn't even notice until after the session. I was like, I put my hat on, and we're all in like space suits, so I guess I've got a hat on around my
People imagine it the way they want,
Right.
I'm not going to get into the semantics of it, I'm the game master. I'm just, whether or not his hat is on top of or under it. Doesn't matter to me.
Yep.
It's not Max, that important.
Yeah, and Max, I can Max and Daryl both have good points here. That they can't, if it's constant, it definitely can be. But like that one, I only had to mention it once and it never happened again. It was it was lighthearted. It was, it was just sort of a funny moment of I think that's a good way to keep it,
there's also a good example of reprimanding a player in Phil the Thrills game of Wild Hell. So if people out there want to see a good example, it was within one of our sessions of Wild Hell that we had a new player show up, and he wasn't staying in character. He was doing a few mistakes where it can negatively impact the rest of it can reduce the rest of the players into that 2D state as well, because they're realizing, oh, he's getting away with it. Well, why aren't we? But with the players that we had, we were all really good players by then. We were seeing the misalignment happening. We were looking to see how Phil would remedy this, and the character's life basically ended. In that situation where it wasn't a thing that happened that was where he was punishing him, but because of his actions, the way that he was stating things, it wasn't going to be going down the way it was happening, and the character's life basically ended. Because it was one of those situations. Hey, you either do this, as an NPC, I'm saying you're going to do this, or this is going to happen, and then he decided no, he's not going to do this, and it was like, okay.
Yep.
The way it goes. You were in a situation where with the knife up to your neck or whatever, and yeah, and we have more stuff in here.
Exactly.
The best when mistakes are dealt with in character, often by others. The door lock, I just arrived. Go. Yeah. Yep.
I've really enjoyed playing a blind character in it's something one of my friends DMs, and it's not the expectation that it would be 3D or 4D, but I liked a lot of the stuff that he was doing. Like he made a magic system where he was like, you have to role play out the ritual of the magic, or you get feedback. You get it's like, well, you can do magic without all the verbal and somatic components and whatnot, but you can see like these wizards that have not done that are all covered in scars, like burn wounds. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. That sounds really compelling. And because I'm kind of the odd one out there, I'm playing a blind dwarf, and somebody say something like, can I see? And I'm like, well, you're asking the wrong guy, pal. I can't see much of anything. So that
Interesting.
It's been kind of what's the word for it? There's enough worth chewing on there. There's there's at least a good memorable moment every session. So it's it's one of those things where it's like, oh, that's cool. I think there's a lot of groups that get like close to the point that get there's a lot that they get, enough that they get right. And if you just incorporate like even a few of the bullet points on the 3D or 4D, it can vastly improve your experience, right?
Yeah. I've been watching a few live plays that have been coming up. I've seen one group where they imply the manners very well, but the game master really does. He does play out what the players their characters are doing. So he takes away their agency, but the quickness of the whole thing, just because nobody's interrupting anybody, made the session so fast. It was really well done in that way. Just having that, just the manners being implied, not interrupting the other players when their turn is up, really, really helps so much. So, and that's what we're all about, imply the rules, the methods that we have will help you in making your game session run faster. So just just take that from us if you want.
Yeah.
Well, let's go over your video, because I thought it was it was pretty cool.
All right, man.
Let's go.
It's just a quick little ramble VR to Zonalar and Crispy. Not like directly, but they started making me think like there's a thing here that you almost never see. Like one of the things that you can look at, if you look at 10 actual plays on YouTube, what are 9 out of 10 of them not doing? And it was kind of this thing. I'd say stop moving your players for them. That's kind of the big thing at the end, but the rest of it, there's more info in there. I can never just talk about one subject.
Let's go through this, and we'll do a bit of discussion over it. Maybe you have some extra insight on.
I might be able to clarify something, if I'm unclear.
So let's see. Let's go from here.
Hey guys, it's Tyler again. I wanted to make a video response to 2 people, namely Crispy and Zonalar.
You hearing that okay? Awesome.
Really inspired me with both of their recent live streams to make a shorter form video that hopefully is of some use to the same people, hopefully hits different people, and that is using different senses in RPGs. What do I mean by that? Do I mean, the GM should just rattle on about you smell this, you hear that, you feel that? No. I mean, as players, we should be interacting with the world to get that information, or mentioning that information ourselves, right? Too often we see characters just yakking at each other in dialogue, and we have no idea where they are. It's hard to read their emotion other than their tone of voice, because what are they? They're talking heads. We don't see any tugging at the...
Now, like that session that I was just talking about, I seen a group that was playing with manners very well. Mm-hmm. One of the things that they could have done a lot better was imply where they were at the moment. Some of the stuff was character interactions, talking to each other. But if you imply what you're doing, and how you're saying things, what you're leaning up against, mm-hmm. how you are, positioned in the game, brings that game aspect back into it, because you're implying your location as well.
And because we can't see things, we need to use it descriptively. And I think I mentioned this in the video, but something that I just like to do is just something that you just do, or that you see someone do. Think of how you would describe that as a character. I've got a little cigarillo in between my index and middle finger, just palming it, not lit, just holding it prospectively. It may say something about you,
Yeah. Or as I lean back in my chair and rock, I tap on my chin and say, "What do you mean by this?" Whatever the response is. It makes it more interesting. And now you're implying different characteristics of your character. Like you're playing him out. He's got his own little quirks and ticks, and those are the things that you're expressing. And to have that happen during the game session, in your turn, you are feeding so much information to your other players as well as the game master. Mm. And he may bring out a pocket watch or something like that. As he's talking, there could be something about that pocket watch that could be brought up later on, or whatever.
Right. It's something I don't think I mentioned is that people often think like, man, my players aren't interested in my NPCs. How do I do, and they get into the railroading thing, and I'm like, what makes an NPC interesting is if you don't lay everything on the table first, but you've just got a guy at the corner of the bar who's like nervously, clicking, opening and closing his lighter, kind of rocking back and forth. It's like, okay, that might be a guy I stay far away from because he's unstable and unhinged, but it might also be a guy that's got like a conundrum that we could help him with. Maybe he's very well dressed, and it's clearly there's a source of money if we can help this guy with this problem.
Yeah, you could have that guy, tittering back and forth, looking with an eye of worry in his brow. He's dwelling on something. Maybe as a character you can approach and ask, what is bothering you, sir? Stuff like that. You bring in all kinds of hooks that way, or whatever. It's open. It's open. To where you want it to go in 4D. So let's continue on here. Some interesting insight.
My character Skorik pushes his eyebrows up. and leans into a contemplative state. And I don't have to say anything. That can move the conversation along. Then an NPC or one of the other player characters can something on your mind. We can have this mix of dialogue, of maybe a talking head, maybe a character, walks into the room, cracks open the door, pokes his head in. Is everything all right? And then we have, things keep going. This isn't just to add reality, depth, immersion. It's a practical issue, right? You see people missing their characters so often, not knowing where their own character is, because they never say where their character is. They never say what their character's doing. They never say their character's eyes dart.
Once again, it's crucial to have those moments where you anchor your character, because it keeps you in the game, aspect. You're implying that you are in a position somewhere on this Mindscape map that you are imagining, be it a tavern or whatever location that you're in. And with you interacting with the chair, or just implying your movements and stuff, you're evoking characteristics of your character, as well as the location of the player as well. So if there is a situation where, as a game master, you drop in something all of a sudden on the where all the characters are, so it does help in case you're gonna bring in something as the game master. Any further insight on your collective thoughts here?
No, not right now. I think I give an example of what I'm talking about here.
Just let me know if you got something to say.
If there's something where I
Around the
face palm,
room
I'll let you know.
as we're having this conversation, well, I'll be right on that real quick. My eyes dart over to an AK with a aftermarket muzzle brake on it, just barely poking out over the reloading bench. That's a cool trick you can use. That's something that Space Roadie mentioned in the Discord, which is a really good habit to build. He mentions movies. Even just looking around, how would you describe the room that you're in right now? How would you describe your actions as you go around the room as a character? And that's where it's different than acting. You're, one, not following a script. Two, it's different than improv because you're the arbiter of your own character. Nobody else can say what your character does, what happens to you. And three, you're describing what you're not physically doing the thing as you would in LARP, as you would in improv. You're describing what your character does. And
a lot of people out there call us LARPers.
So I teach a kid privately that does LARP. I teach him historical European martial arts, because there's more crossover with martial arts than there is with RPGs, at least in the way that we do them. And that's because he's actively doing the thing, right? His character doesn't have the closest they get are things like when you're making your character, depending on like the rules for the LARP that you use, you either can or can't use certain melee weapons, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then it's all down to your skill as an individual, whether or not you hit the other guy. You're not using any mechanics to see, like, you're physically doing the thing. You're not describing how you swing your sword at the guy. You just do the thing. So there's it's not it doesn't really work that way. Likewise, when you have LARP that uses magic and stuff, they sort of fall apart in my opinion, because you have to stop doing the thing. This guy said he's casting a fireball on you, and we have to use whatever the rules for the fireball are, and it's incongruent. It's not. I think the people, like 90% of people who bring up LARP in any situation, because I have two hobbies that people call LARP, HEMA and RPGs. And I'm like, well, neither of them are LARP. There's some similarities. There's some similarities there, but most people just don't know what LARP is, and they just throw that word out, willy-nilly, because they, they see 5-second clips of somebody going magic missile, and they're like, oh, I can use this word to make fun of people.
Well, that's one of those memes that are out there now. So
Yeah.
when I was younger, I used to have a buddy, Tim, and we used to make like put on like different things for armor, a football helmet, and stuff like that too, and decorate it up a bit. And we used to go out and beat the hell out of each other with wooden swords and stuff. But there wasn't any kind of game to it. We were just goofing around, being young adolescent, near teenagers at the time, and we didn't have any kind of explicit rules or anything like that. But we would just have fun and smack each other around and have a good time. But we never explored into LARP or anything like that. We never did anything that was involving any kind of rolling or rules or any kind of rule set. We were just using our imagination and having a blast and blowing off some steam. So with role play, I mean, sure, you can add like maybe a bit of acting with an accent or whatever. It's not necessary. If you're not good at it, don't do it. If you're good at it, sure, maybe you could give a voice or something to your character. But we don't do anything that's outright crazy or start getting up and start doing acting kind of things.
And most of us don't use voices even. It's
yeah. I mean, I will once in a while, only because I do it as a game master. I'll have an NPC, I'll have an idea.
If you're controlling multiple characters, it can, as the GA, it can be helpful to put on like an affect or something to differentiate characters. That's the word I was looking for.
And as far as dressing up, I mean, I think we might have done a little bit of it just to add a bit of atmosphere in our Fear City game, where a few of us were dressed up in some sort of attire that was adequate. Especially Crispy. Like Crispy's one of the best ones out there for if you want to learn about anchoring and stuff like that. He is a great example of this method. So definitely subscribe to Table Runner Crispy if you're out there and learn those aspects. He's a great exemplar of it. Watch the videos that he's in with the live streams and stuff. Where we're actually posting our games. It's great. If you're terrible at accents, so I'm used to speaking several languages, so for me it's not so bad. All right, let's continue on here.
You're bound by the game mechanics. That's all it is, right? It's really quite simple. But yeah, other things. Gesticulating, My character's very handsy. He talks with his hands a lot. He's waving his hands up and down. Maybe he's a fast talker trying to get you to buy something that you really shouldn't. Trying to move this hot good, He doesn't want you to know that mere moments ago he had just looted this off of a dead body in a dungeon that he had found. The character walks up reeking of filth because he's been fighting undead for days on end. Those senses never get activated.
Yeah. The
adventurers never bathe.
Presents a dagger with blood encrusted on it. Just excuse that. Beautiful example of 13th century, whatever. Stuff, and just in case people out there, it's okay to maybe snicker or something, you can do that. Just don't make it like a thing where it's just where you take up all the time of laughing it off or whatever. Sometimes you can't, and you just have to kind of stifle it just to avoid. But there is a bit of snickering that happens once in a while in a game. That's fine. That's fine.
Naturally funny. It's funny. That's
that's
a good thing. That's at least a good reason to have to break character. If you I think it's only ever happened once. But if you have if it totally breaks down, and sometimes you'll have just a what is it, a comedy of errors, and just nothing's going right, and it's just everything falls apart, and you have to cut, break, and come back, and then let that energy bleed off, and then come back to where you left off.
Sometimes it might be a good time for a break. Being in 4D does take a bit of it is it's a little bit more of an exercise with the brain than you would at a beer and pretzels kind of 2D game. You are focused on what the other players are saying, and that is part of the thing. If you're not used to doing that, I mean, you might need some time to train yourself up to keep that focus. Some people aren't inclined to being so focused. Therefore, a 2D game may be much more better for you, but at least try to imply some of the rules to make it a little bit more faster, so you're not doing an hour per turn, and that's so sad. It makes me so sad when it's an hour per turn.
And something that I've found is if you put a hard limit on your game as far as time goes, something like, when 2 hours is up, we gotta go, people are busy, they gotta go do something else. A lot of the dead air gets cut out. A lot of the out of character stuff, people are inclined to do do stuff faster, pay attention. It cuts a lot of the gristle off, trims the fat quite a bit.
True enough.
And further, when you imply these sensations, either as a GM or as a player, the mechanics should fit that, right? That recent game, 3D6 Down the Line, that Crispy looked at, it was really frustrating to see, okay, you're not taking any HP damage from this, but your arm is melted down to the bone. Well, hang on. This is partially the player's fault for not roleplay solves everything. Yeah, he definitely should be roleplay. GM says, your arm is melted down to the bone. You should be roleplaying that, regardless of what the hit point damage was.
Exactly. I was trying to bring that up kind of with my explanation to how to do crits with the Hexman Actual, with what he was asking there. So, I mean, depending on your rule set and everything, but overall, as a player playing his character, if you're suddenly missing 3 fingers off of your hand, what would you imagine that character doing if he was in a movie? First, he would be removing himself from the conflict in order to deal with this, spurt going on happening here.
Sorry, but you just reminded me of something that I used to hear all the time when I was playtesting for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which was there was an issue or a perceived issue in Pathfinder 1st Edition, which is as long as combat is going on, you shouldn't heal because then the fight just keeps going. Whereas if you do damage and you kill the other thing, it removes the threat. And logically, if you've got a character that can be perfectly steely and cogent in the moment, that can make sense, right? But you have to think, well, hang on, I've just been stabbed. I want you to heal me right now, man. I don't know if I've got time for later. I mean,
you could vocalize that.
Exactly.
He turns to the healer. I turn to the healer. Do something about this, That's what you're doing. It makes such an excellent visual, and the other character can go ahead and okay. could say a blurb before his turn comes up, and then
but,
when his turn does come up, does he heal him?
Or does he try
he's
to
like-
kill the thing that did that to him? You know, that becomes
yeah.
an interesting thing.
Keep in mind, if you're
Yeah.
distracted and everything,
Yeah.
you know, your healer's going to come in and try and help you, but you're both going to be at a, I would say at a minus at something that the character, the monster that is still on your face, you know,
then
is still going to be
you know,
there.
Maybe somebody else tries to run a distraction, and you can have these tactics in character. That's why I always don't like this fighting between like, oh, you can be, you know, you can either role play or you can be tactical. And it's like, no, you can do both. Just do it in character. Do it as the characters would. Yeah.
And this too, this depends on how your character is. If you are that stoic, you know, staunch, you know, heroic type that will, you know, often, you know, shrug off certain things, you know, that could happen. You could be the Black Knight off of, you know, Monty Python and say it's just a flesh wound or whatever, you know. That's your character. That is your character, but. Keep in mind, you know, if you're bleeding, you're still gonna be gushing out hit points or whatever it is that, you know. It just imply it as the game master, how realistic you've implied it during your session 0. It's all session 0 stuff that you have to kind of discuss with each other too. A lot of. Here he was talking about even think Private Ryan beach scene. Yeah, I mean shit can be flying. You could emphasize that your character's brain is going numb from the PTSD that's going on. You know, as shit is happening. He, you know, moves his buddy aside, sees half of his head is missing. You know, it's just gonna you're gonna have the 1,000-mile stare for some time, right? So play your character out like that or whatever. However it's happening. This may be something that, you know, sure, you may act like, you know, oh, I'm in shock and everything and stunned. Play your character out like that. He may become stronger at the end of this after, you know, facing his fears and everything. But play that throughout the situation. Maybe he has an arc where he becomes more brave or something like that. It's stuff that you have to imply as your character.
Right.
You know, there's so many dynamics you can add as your player character that you know, that makes it more interesting. If you're a good player and you're playing these things out, your other players are going to feed on this too and become part of this situation, this scenario that's happening. How do we stop the bleeding, you know, and stuff like that, or whatever, you know, whatever's happening at the time, and it becomes part of that scene in Star Trek or whatever, you know, aliens, you know, we're coming in from, you know, you've got them freak out little scenarios that happen, and how people try to keep it together is part of the interesting thing. And you know, you have to take your sessions as not being as a full-on campaign, blah blah blah. You know, it's this scenario currently happening right now. And as I take my scenario, like I've been evolving through my 4D. Nowadays, I just take whatever situation my players initially put themselves into. I'm in the bedroom doing this, and this. Well, the action is going to start there or whatever. You know, this scenario is going to start from there. You know, you're either going to be approached by somebody in order to do something, or there's going to be something that happens which creates a situation where you need to fix it and figure out how to resolve the situation at current hand. Be it in your bedroom, be it in the tavern, be it in the, you know, on the deck of your ship, be it on the, you know, in the depths of a dungeon currently in session. You know, you could have a scenario start in the middle of a dungeon, in media ray, you know, basically.
Yep.
And you know, that's how I play stuff now. I've started to say, okay, wherever the players are, whatever they say the situation, that's how I'm going to start it. You know,
There you go.
that's where
Yeah.
the action is going to happen.
Yeah,
now,
that
so.
can be a cool one.
I don't. I've
Involve
stopped.
your. Oh, yep.
Yeah, I've stopped leading characters into a situation.
Mm-hmm.
I just okay, this is where you're at. This is where it happens. So
Well, and like involve your players more in session 0. Like we did a not quite session 0, but just like brainstorming for the next game whenever I'm finished with this one, which is it's always a good sign when you have a group that's like already thinking about the next game. You know, they're dedicated. That's really nice, and they're saying like, okay, my character steps out of a grave. Like and I'm like, that's where we're gonna start. Holy crap, that's don't do that. I was like, we could do that like before we start the session, but it's like, yeah, that's so much lamer to talk about and so much cooler to be like, okay, so everybody's added this graveyard. Some guy just sprouts out of the grave, wipes the grave dust off of his head and looks around and everyone's it's like, what the hell's going on here? Everybody else is at this graveyard for one or another reasons, and I don't know what's going to happen, but something is going to hit the fan. This is clearly a weird, cursed, magical. Something's weird about this graveyard. Anyways, I don't know yet.
Yeah. And keep in mind, maybe your players might start in different spots.
Yeah.
And that's totally okay too. Mm-hmm. As long as you're keeping that continual, round robin happening and everybody gets their turn, wherever you are.
That's one of the biggest problems I have with some of my home games is GMs not, the party splits and then they focus on one group for too long. And then you're sitting there for, 15, 20 minutes waiting like, okay, this is interesting, but I'm just an audience member here. Like I'm compelled, but my arms are kind of folded and I'm just like, all right, when's it gonna, when do I get to play?
Yeah. I think if it gets very talky, I'll let it slide maybe a back and forth maybe a couple of times or something like that.
Right.
Because often you will I don't want my scenes to play out like the movie Return to the Valley of the Dolls. If anybody's watched that, it's kind of like it's like as if everybody's taking a turn. Right. It's going around the entire, people are dancing at this disco or whatever, and they're all talking to each other, and it becomes so that you're like, what's going on? You'll become confused. So you must have that continuation of back and forth with the conversations in order to make it make sense. Because as soon as you turn away from that, and then you're going into a different conversation. So let that go back and forth a couple of times, and then to the next, group of characters, let that go back and forth. It makes more sense instead of he says this, then we go to a totally different conversation, with this character because he's next in line. He's talking to somebody else, and you're just going to get people forgetting what they were talking about to the other character. So you want to do a little bit of leeway in there sometimes. So. At least I feel it's kind of acceptable to let it kind of linger
because
a couple of rounds.
There may be a little bit of dead air, and then something. You get the Columbo. Oh, and one more thing, right? As the conversation's about to end, and then maybe a bombshell drops. Something important does happen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does. But even in soap operas, something, you usually do get something compelling happening every episode. So,
Now, if you're implying your conversation with your action, that is the key thing. Mm-hmm. With your action or implying your anchoring as well. Really helps in the game aspect of it. So, because you need, as the game master, you need to know where your players have their characters. So, we have another one here from Conway. All the 40 YouTubers reacting to the slop of the Tyler out here is reacting to himself. He is too powerful to be allowed to live.
Maybe so. Maybe he has this 5D and
Yeah, 5D. So what would 5D be? Oh my gosh, what else could happen?
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, there's
We haven't gone into 5D or will we ever go into 5D?
yeah, who knows? Yeah,
It's hard enough to get people into 3D.
right, exactly. Let's
like
take one
staying
D
in
at a time.
character
Yeah,
and implying the rules to have one turn at a time. 4D, you're implying that you're going to add co-creation to it, to give it an extra dimension. But yeah, definitely make a video show how you can improve roleplay after you've attained it in a role-playing game. Yeah. Try to make your dialogues occur during the action scenes. It's what I said about in chat. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, go for it. Do something like that. The more videos we have out there on these topics, even overlapping other you can take what I've said and add to it. You can take what Tyler said here in his video and keep on going with it. A lot of us were doing this early in 4D because we're trying to get the word out there, and the more that you feed into the algorithm that we're all talking about this particular topic, the more you will, flood the internet with more of this topic for other people.
Cast a wider net,
Yeah, it's important to have your new people in the audience that are coming in and discovering that you're discovering new things as well. Might help spread this part of the hobby out a little bit more. Let's continue on with your video here.
But it's hard to roleplay it when the mechanics don't fit that, right? So when you're bringing up these other senses, pain, maybe it's just totally cooked it so much that you don't even feel it. That could be a cool scene to roleplay.
Something that triggered in my mind here was the idea that you have to have, once again, good players that will play out these contingencies that happen to them.
Right.
They'll play that out. If there's a wound that seems grievous, if they play out that wound, awesome. You're such an awesome player for doing that, because you're feeding into what that character is doing and how he is reacting to that situation. If you're burnt, you become a sudden burn victim from a flame strike or something. Play that out. You're going to be trying to put out stuff on. You're going to be basically patting yourself,
right.
or stop, drop, and roll or something. Play that out. You're not just going to stand there and take it. Or you can act like you're brushing it off and go like, the heat is impossible to take, and I back off. You could do that, or the heat is impossible to take, and with my last running breath, I move forwards to lunge at the whatever it is that you're doing, but imply that you are being impeded by this or whatever it is that's occurred. That is awesome to have. The game master will take care of all the minuses involved and stuff like that. That's what you're doing there as a game master. You're adjudicating what the chances are. Chances are being combusted. Chances of you being asphyxiated during this flames, right? Could be taking up all the air in the area. Everybody else has to make rolls as well because they're suddenly out of breath or something. So now they fight for the next couple rounds at a -2 or something like that. Stuff like you adjudicate the rules. You're implying these. If people have arguments about them afterwards, that's at the end of the game session.
You just need to know what the core mechanic is and what your character, know your character sheet, know your core mechanic and the mechanics that you interact with. But you don't need to know the rule book cover to cover necessarily if you're not running it, right?
And this stuff isn't even implied in traditional role playing game books.
Yeah.
It's oh yeah, your character's bleeding out because he's missing his arm. Well, how do I play that out? You know,
Right.
it's not implied in the book. You're just looking at it as hit points, you know. But in 4D, if you're losing a limb, you better be playing your character as if you're
something something really cool that happened in one of my games a while ago. So where is it? Daryl mentioned that are there systems that aren't very good for 4D, and people will mention that hit points that are in most games are kind of a loosey goosey abstraction. So you have to role play it out, and that's kind of what I'm talking about here in the video. Is when you do lose hit points, you need to. It's more up to the player to abstract what that is. You know, you get hit with a sword. You know, in a game I played in, it was a Pathfinder game. Somebody was tripped and took some damage, and they played that out as they broke their ankle. I was like, that's so cool. It's not just, oh, I take 12 hit points. And then in so many of these games, they'll look, 12 hit points? Oh, well, I've got 60, so I'm perfectly fine. You know, I just pop back up and then keep it. No, hold on, man. This guy just whacked you in the ankle with an ash staff, not hard enough to knock you on your ass. And he starts to, you know, stumble up to his feet and goes, we end up winning the fight, but we have to run somewhere. We're on a time crunch. And now he's limping along and we're like, oh shit, we gotta, you know, he imposed that on himself, you know, but that was really cool. And we were like, oh shit, yes. All right, let's see how we can get our, you know, our impaired man here moving quick with us.
A 4D game master will love it when you as a player do that, because you're showing that it's not the point to win, it's the point to embody this character in whatever situation he's currently in, and
to make something interesting happen. Right?
Yes,
you know? Because if you're trying to win against the GM, you'll always lose because the GM can always just put a bigger obstacle in the way. That's why I've never understood this GM versus players mindset, because it's like, well, the GM at the end of the day can just say the classic rocks fall, everyone dies. If they really want to, if winning is what matters, you know.
Yeah, this is as far as I got with the video the first time I watched it. So the rest of this is kind of like brand new. Do you get into the semantics of what the game master, like the DM or game master, what he controls and what the player controls?
I don't. I thought about it, but I wanted to keep it like a sub, you know, around a 10-minute video. And I thought, you know, I've already mentioned a few things here. But that's probably a topic for another video, but we could talk about that here for sure.
I find it's important as you know, because the game master should control everything that is NPC wise. That means bullets coming out of his gun or his sword, where it strikes, all that stuff. But as far as the damage and the implications of that damage should be on the player, and vice versa as well. Reverse that, and you know, when the player decides where he's striking and with what weapon he's using and all that stuff, he rolls his damage. It is up to the game master as the NPC to indicate how that damage applies on that character.
Yeah,
I standardize that pretty much as you know, in session 0 for my players to understand.
Yeah.
So, and that includes, you know, even flame. You know, having you know the smell of sulfur. You know, in sulfur derides in the air in a mist. It's up to the players to decide how that sulfur is affecting them. I could say as a game master, roll a save Constitution, and then everybody does their roll save Constitution, play it out. If you fail it, you know, you're going to be coughing, choking.
Yeah, right.
You know, whatever. Whatever. -2 as a contingency.
That's another thing people will kind of say, that's like, oh, you know, that's tricky to 4D or even 3D, you know, the save. But it's like, all you have to do is, why are they making the save? A fireball's heading towards them. Make a reflex save. They make the reflex save. Now they describe what it's like, and you can just say what the DC is, so they can already describe, oh, I know I failed, I know I succeeded, I'll just describe it. Or you could wait for them to read it out, and just pass, fail, whatever.
Right.
It's just that little mention, and then they get to describe, and I'll let characters, drop prone, and, if they're trying to, dodge the fireball that way, and, it might get a bonus to evade it or something like that, what have
you as a game master, you adjudicate to whatever the players are doing.
Yeah,
if they're saying that they're rolling, well, then, be considerate of you got to be a good listener.
Yep.
As a game master for 4D, and just if you have to write down a note or two, write it down. Like something to save later. Oh yeah, all that stuff that was when he made that save throw against that attack.
Yep.
That could have been for his valuables in his backpack and stuff. He won't know that until later on when he opens up his pack and there's hey dude, you're dripping oil out of the back of your backpack. An NPC could say to him or something, or whatever.
Yep.
You write down these notes for contingencies later on. I call them pushes. You're gonna have, write these things down. It makes it interesting later on. Oh no, I don't have that potion that I'm relying on right now. It's been smashed.
Yep.
And
something starts to get slow. Things aren't moving along. Maybe there's suddenly a gnawing coming from somebody's pack, and a rat got in overnight because they camped in not a very secure area, and it's just been eating through. The wizard's totally out of scrolls because it's just eaten through all of them. It's like, damn it.
Nice.
Expensive ass rat.
That's hilarious. I lean way back like a scene from The Matrix as a fireball singes my chest hairs.
Depends
you're
on
describing
code,
it.
Yeah.
Whoa. Sure. Awesome. And you're not saying, you're not doing the the little scene and everything like you would do at a Monty Python, remember this scene, blah blah. No, you're stating it here as if it was a thing, which is perfect because you're not disrupting the game with member berries or anything like that. I say member berries because South Park. But this is perfect. Yeah, it was like a scene from The Matrix. The fireball cinches my. Awesome. That's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. And let's continue on with your discussion here.
And there's just abject horror as I look down at my arm and rotate it around, and there's nothing left. A sort of state of shock. That would be cool.
I'll even sacrifice a turn, as a player. In that case, is it my next turn? I'm going to be looking in shock as from the remains of my arm. Gape in awe.
I had a player. They had this this horrific color out of space. Out of H.P. Lovecraft. That was just this. It was like literally sucking the color out of one of these characters. They were just becoming like a pale shell of their former selves. And one of the characters decided that was so horrifying, they just turned and ran. That was, they left. They got the hell out of there.
It's and that happens in a movie, that sort of stuff. Sometimes your character isn't equipped, mentally for what he suddenly sees, and play it out, play that out. If your character's that type of character, play it out. If he's just a farm boy, I'm going to become an adventurer, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly he's seeing shocking scenes of death and
it's free money out there. Why isn't everybody doing this? And then you get out there and it's like, oh, that's why now.
If you're playing the seasoned veteran, he's not going to be affected the same way, but he may go, do the thousand mile stare, later on, as he reflects on what's happened. You could sit down and try to, vent out or act out, in a PTSD kind of situation. Definitely play your character out. That's why Hicks and Hudson and all these characters, Vasquez, they had their own quirks and stuff like that. You see that in their actions and everything. Hicks being more of an optimist, Hudson being a pessimist, and that's how they played their characters, and it made it an interesting dynamic, and they become unforgettable characters, even though they died. You still remember them, right?
Yeah.
It's cool. It's good to have a cool death, I think.
Has his hand cut off, and there's a brief moment of shock, and then he starts punching the guy with the stub and goes, "Oh, thanks. I was always worried about breaking my fingers. Now I don't have to hold back." It's such a cool scene. It says it's ridiculous. It tells you something about the character, but it's not all done through dialogue. He looks down, it pans over the stump. It's even books are not done all through dialogue, rather other than like the rare I forget what that type of book is called, where it's all done through letters being written back and forth. But even within the letter, they're going to describe something that happened to them. They're going to if it's a war correspondence novel, it's going to usually one of the characters in their letters is describing the bombs falling, the shrapnel poking through somebody's leg all the way through one side and out the other.
This is interesting, but could you imagine a role playing where it's basically correspondence letters going back and forth, and you're creating the scenario through the correspondence letters and what happened and stuff like that? It'd be kind of interesting. Be
Thank
good
you,
for
LSD Dean. It's epistolary. I've forgotten about that. Don't worry about being a nerd. I have a degree in technical writing, so yep. It's yeah. I mean, you could do that. I think certainly you could do something like that through like play by post would work. That'd be kind of cool. It'd be interesting.
There's something of a game that could be made in that. I think it might be something worthy of trying to write up something for a rule set for something like that. That'd be cool.
Smell of gangrene that you can just tell that death is in the air.
Yeah.
The sounds, the tinnitus, that is something that almost never gets brought up with games that have guns in them. It's something that almost never gets brought up even with movies and other media. So it may be
ringing of ears. I've shot a 45, and like we're talking about the actual where you create your cartridge and everything. 45.
45 long call. Yeah.
I mean, boom! Your ears are ringing for sometimes if you don't have any. No wonder Discord is so quiet. Yeah, of course. We're all in here. If
hanging out here with all the cool kids.
If you're wondering why, we're just hanging out, and this is where we come to go ahead and people can come in. I have a link in the Discord there in RPG Talk. So if you want to come in, I try to do this. I'm going to be trying to do this every Thursday, 1 p.m. Mountain Time. So that'd be 12 p.m. for you Pacific dwellers. Eastern side, it'd be 3 o'clock. So yeah, come on in, and if you're part of the 4D group, the link is in there. RPG Talk inside that area of our Discord. You just pop on in. This is fine. This is your area to ask questions or talk or bring up videos that you thought were pretty interesting and stuff, and just discuss and have fun with it.
Yeah.
Let's continue on here.
Sure
thing. But if you're in a grittier, more realistic tone, maybe you're deaf for a combat. Maybe you're trying to talk tactics like, oh, I've got him, he's hit. You can rush him. I'm reloading. And all the other guy's seeing is...
Exactly.
And you might have to tap, like, can't hear you, man. I'm totally freaking deaf. I lost my ear pro. It got blown off in the backblast, something like that. We can have these cool back and forth interactions. Start stroking my beard in contemplation. Even the little stuff like that doesn't really tell you anything. It tells you what the character's doing. It tells you where my hand isn't. It tells you my hand's not on my pistol. It tells you I'm not threatening. Whereas if we don't want to get into the situation where we have to go, oh, so is your hand like on your pistol? Is your hand like, the fewer questions that we have to ask out of character, preferably 0. That's the goal, is to have 0 out of character questions, right? That way it just goes smoothly, the better. Likewise, the less I have to yank you around if I'm the GM and go, okay, so what are you guys doing? Where are you? The better. Because when we do that, what happens? Oh, GM, hold on, I was like over there. I was doing a thing. Actually, I wanted to be over here. Can I be over here, GM? Just move yourself. If you move yourself, we don't run into this issue. GMs don't move people around. Don't move people around and just let like an awkward silence fall and wait for one of the players to move something.
No, the awkward silence becomes less and less the more that you work with your players.
Yep.
And your players will start to know you.
Yep.
And you build that trust between you and your players. And I think that's a cool thing too. I bring this up all the time, like with Max, Max, reactionary Max there, principal. He had to build trust with me, to realize.
You want high trust gaming here. That's something about it, and that's something I think is carries over to a lot of hobbies. When you're sparring with somebody, you want to trust the guy that's trying to take your, that's punching you in the face, that he's not trying to take your head off, right? When you're role playing with somebody, you want to trust that they're here to role play and they're not, oh, well, GM, can I get a +2 for this and a +4 for that and a plus, they're trying to run through the like amount of numbers. They're test driving their turn, which is a term I like that Max and Kristen used, where it's like, no, just do the thing, man. In card games too, we always say reading the card explains the card. It's, guys don't have to ask, it's like, what's that in there? Is that a combo piece? Is that, doing that? Like, dude, just play the game and you'll find out. Play the game and find out.
Exactly. It's all one turn at one action at a time.
Right.
You will have plenty of time to either counter what you're doing, right, or readjust, reassess. Right. You're doing it one turn at a time. Don't think of it. You're doing like a series of things in order to do. Forget that. Get that out of your head anymore. You do things one turn at one action at a time, whatever is the allowance of whatever system you're using. Sometimes it'll be 3 actions per turn or whatever it is, for Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Just play within the confines of the rule set that you're using. And but keep your role play very nice and loose. You're going to be able to do the things that are implied in the rules, and you rely on your intuition, your how real you want to make this, how the damage should come across and stuff like that. That's you cover that once again all on session 0, but play within the confines that you've given yourself, the spectrum of how you want this to play out. You want realistic damage and stuff like that. Imply that in your session 0. This is the way we're going to play it, guys. It's going to be visceral and real, or whatever,
If it's way too long and you're in the same scene, then you can have an NPC or something move in and go, hey, just move on.
That helps too for those lulls.
Maybe something's attacking the building that you're in. You have a push, and what's a way to do that. That's not through dialogue. That's not through
I like how we've made a lexicon of different terms and stuff like that. We're all referring to the push, the anchoring, all this stuff. It's part of our how we say things now in our role play, and hopefully it kind of these terms and everything kind of start working their way into other into the 2D gamers out there and stuff, so they can become 3D, or gradually get to that point and stuff. So,
some of the typical, the visual, the sound senses, the ground rumbling below your feet. Maybe you're in an air raid shelter and it's being bombed, and it's clear that the shelter isn't going to last. Your players are, their characters are planning on just sitting there waiting the war out. But now, and it's clear that that's a really, kind of a boring scene. Everybody's got plenty of food. Everything's just been going really well for what's supposed to be a war drama sort of game. And so it's like, okay, we gotta do something here. We gotta hit the building a little harder. Turns out you're in Dresden. Playing some Slaughterhouse-5. That could be cool.
And then you add in the okay, well, all this thing is happening. In the meantime, the undead are rising from beneath in the crypts beneath the foundations of where they release some sort of X9 toxin into the air, slight smell of whiff of some form of what we call it, like what would you use for bodies to keep them pure?
Formaldehyde.
Formaldehyde in the air, something like that. This is the reason why I say write down ideas, so you're not stuck like me. Like what was the word for that? That's why I write stuff down in my book for just doing.
Have a good lexicon.
Just stuff, ideas.
Yeah.
So you're not stuck on words, and that helps in improvisation. So you're not stuck going, "What's the word for that?" But imply different things. It could be easily you can make this into a totally awesome game in the inside of the shelter itself. Now you're fighting zombies. There's bombs going off on the outside. Stuff is collapsing, caving in at times, and now you've got yourself a scenario that will last for the entire game session, where you're, it's suddenly something different, and it's great.
Dice Tale. It could be a like a psychological thriller. Imagining the opening scene from Inglourious Bastards, where he's interrogating that farmer, and they're trying to hide things. There's no real combat happening, but it's very clear. Like if your player characters were that farmer and the people hiding in the basement, it would be like, oh, okay, actually we can't just hide here. You as a GM could have that Gestapo officer coming by to be like, no, this isn't a free, this isn't where this session ends. We're only 30 minutes in, something like that.
Yeah,
or maybe if it's been long enough, maybe that's the success state. Maybe that is where congratulations, you've gotten into a bomb shelter, and we end the session there, and then maybe we talk about like maybe continuing it later on if it has. And that's also GM will have to. That's part of the purview of the GM is usually making a call of like where's the session end.
So overall, I think this is.
I need to reread Vonnegut. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. Those are really cool.
Well, I let you know what I thought. Anyways, I thought you had a good little discussion there that will help people think about things. Like prompt ideas. I never thought of that. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I am moving my players' characters around and making them smell things and touch things and stuff that they didn't imply that they were doing. A lot of people have to stop. Game masters should stop doing that. Some players are totally okay with that.
Right.
Keep on going with your games. Keep on doing it. But if you want to 4D it, this is what we ponder about this stuff and talk about it. And, figure out the workarounds for things.
Yep.
If you let's see. If you as a game GM make me smell things, I'm going to kick you out of my house. That's right. You can imply, a pollen in the air or something like that. Let the players decide on what that smells like or something. Oh, that sweet smell. I just, wow, it's really. Or if somebody's like, oh, my eyes, oh, they're so itchy, or whatever. Every character is different. Play it out.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we did a pretty good discussion. It's 3:00 now, so for me, it's a good 2-hour discussion about
for me,
stuff.
And there's my fiance coming home, so I think that is a good, perfect timing.
It's time for my wife to come home too. So wives are coming home, so it's time for us to clear out of here.
So, thanks for having me as always, Rick. I hope
you are most welcome all the time. So just pop in whenever you feel like it, or if you have a video that you think maybe I should cover, we'll use this time to do something like that as well too. Whoever comes in, away we go. Everybody, once again, this is Flame Zombie down below me. Not just Tyler, it's Flame Zombie. You see his thing on the doobly-doo down below here, D&D, stop moving your players, just down below there, Flame Zombie, join, sub him, and, you'll be blessed with some insight on using weapons and stuff like that, and all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah, all kinds of, 4D insight as well. And, awesome seeing you guys as well, and once again, back at her tonight. I'm pretty sure probably Max is probably going to be doing something tonight, right? Or something, or somebody will be doing something tonight. So if not, I'll try to show up, if somebody throws something on. So awesome. Thanks you guys for showing up, and thanks for having us. Any questions, further on, you guys have any questions, put them in the comments down below. And those who are watching, definitely read the chat that's going on. A lot of great insight going on back and forth as well too. Basically, what we have going on in Discord as well. So, boys, back to Discord and start yakking back and forth there again.
Yeah.
Talk to you guys later. All right.
I'll see you guys.